This podcast is powered by Masterpiece Kingdom Brands. This episode is made possible by OhNothingNonprofit.org. For today's episode, we will go to the land down under. We will explore the power of a story combined with excellent craftsmanship and authenticity. We'll learn how your message can make a real impact in people's lives. Joining us from Melbourne, Australia is a singer and songwriter and teacher and the author of the book Silver Lining, The Story of Summer, Snow and Sky. Welcome to the show, Liesl Field.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on the show, Liesl. It's such an honor to have you here. You are a singer and you are a songwriter and you are a teacher. How did that happen? Later on, we're going to talk about your book as well. So can you just tell our listeners a little bit of a background of how all these 3 or 4 major things play a role?
For sure. So I've always wanted to be a teacher. I remember being a little girl and for Christmas I got a blackboard back in the day and chalk, and so I'd set it up and I'd put my little soft toys down and they would be looking at the blackboard and I'd be writing the sums, and I've always wanted to be a teacher. I have a bit of background with my grandmother and my mum both going through teachers college, so always wanted to be a teacher. I have loved being that. It's such an honour to be that person in a child's life that can nurture them and encourage them and educate them. So yeah, I've loved being teaching, but I've always had a passion for music. So again, from very young age, I loved music. I think I wrote my first song when I was about 9, just put words together. I used to write poetry, so that's how I started. And then just, I don't know, got melodies in my head and just started to hum them and put these words together. So yeah, just have always loved music. And then the author thing came a little bit later. So, you know, I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories. You can ask any of my family or friends. Whenever I'm around, I've always got a story about something. And so, yeah, just putting this story together was a really special journey for me and a healing process.
Wow. A very, very interesting start. And I think a lot of our listeners can relate to that. You never defy the things when you're young and you do these things. These things set us up for the future, I suppose. Liesl, you released an album entitled Finding Me. Is that correct? This was not too long ago. Was this your first album?
Well, no. My husband and I actually were in a band together. And so we released an album before that, but it was very different music. And this album, Finding Me, was a little bit more personal to me. So some of my journey comes through the songs. Again, you know, just writing songs. I journal as well. So that's where a lot of my music came out. But yeah, we released this album simply because these songs, they really came to this really deep place of emotion for me, and when I sang them and performed them for others, they said that the same thing happened, that they could really feel that emotion. In fact, we went overseas and did a little bit of volunteer work, my husband and I, and we went into this hospital, and in the hospital they had these lovely children, you know, who were just unfortunately ill and unable to stay in their own homes. So we had a concert. We decided to cheer them up and have this concert. So there I was performing, and the only thing was it was in the Czech Republic, in Prague. So I was singing in English, talking in English, and I had an interpreter who could speak the language. We had this concert, and then I started to say, I've written this song and I'd love to share it with you. So I started singing this song, and a group of girls walked in about maybe the first few minutes of the song, and they sat down, and then I started to just really sing out of my heart for this, what I was trying to communicate. The song's called Princess. And so I finished the song and they all clapped, you know, I love the music. And then afterwards, these girls that had come in a little bit later came up to me, and through an interpreter, they said, we don't know what the words were that you were saying, but when you were singing, we could feel what you were saying. And then they started to say things like that they feel valuable, that they feel loved, and that they're special. And that's exactly what the song's about. It's about finding your value and putting your crown back on. So I was amazed that even through a song that had a different language, these girls could capture that, you know, the whole message, the heart of what the song was about.
Yeah, that's really true. I heard the song myself and actually got goosebumps the first time I heard that line. What's the lyrics of the chorus in the last part? Don't forget to take your crown.
Yes, that's right. Yep. So take your crown back, princess. Yeah. So put your crown back on. Yeah.
Put that crown back on, princess. That's really true. And I think that's the power of music, hey? Like even in a different language, it connects the heart.
That's right. Yes. And I mean, I've had songs do that for me in the past. So it just feels like such an honor to have that song that other people can listen to and feel that way.
That's amazing. Are you still planning to do more songs in the future?
Yes, definitely. We're actually working on some more songs at the moment. I just don't think it's something I'll ever give up. For the rest of my life, I'll be somebody who writes lyrics and sings and communicates that sense of hope. That's what I feel like the songs are, that they're an opportunity to sing to people who need that hope. They need to hear a different message, and music is just so powerful in doing that.
That's incredible. We cannot wait to hear more of these songs in the future, and so we're excited about that. Liesl, how would you describe your journey as an artist and I think more as a person? Because you've been in this industry for a long time and then you've also ventured into a different industry in publishing and in education. But I don't think a lot of people really understand what it's like. Some people would think like, oh, it just happens like that. It's just natural. It looks so easy. People see the highlights of our lives on social media. But what has been one thing that has kept you in the journey and focused on your music, your story, and where you're going?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'd have to say that the word purpose. For me, I love the arts and I love communicating that and communicating through speaking and through storytelling. But I think having a purpose behind it for me, I also think determination. You're not going to succeed the first time or the first 10 times sometimes or the first 50 times. But I feel as if we've taken the opportunities, my husband and I have taken the opportunities, and if they've ended up having not as much, I guess, momentum as we expected, we still don't see it as a failure. We still see it as being a learning opportunity. We've had fantastic people around us who've really inspired us as well. We've got some great musicians in the family and in our local church community and extensive further out into other countries as well. So we're looking at their lives as well, saying they're not giving up. They're still free to be artistic and I guess just whatever message it is in your heart that you believe, to express that through, it could be through singing, could be through our stories, through speaking to someone. I feel like everyone has a gift. Everyone has something. I believe we all have a story, and it doesn't necessarily just have to be one big story, but like a collective of all the stories. So I feel like that's where I feel free. So there's determination and there's purpose. So for me, I see my purpose being communicating love, the perfect love that's been given to me by a God who loves me. I think that not giving up has been really important for us, really important.
Yeah, and it seems like you've really taken it by heart that no matter how the story looks like in that certain season, you go through. The problem sometimes is that we only want to say a good story all the time. Like it always just looks beautiful outside, but that's not real life.
No, it's not. I actually wrote Princess when I was sick at home. I wasn't able to go to school, like to work. And I remember sitting in my bedroom and just going, oh, I just feel so bad. And then I started to look at my journal, started to journal. I was like, oh, and then it all just started to come. It was one of the, I guess, the hard days of that year or that week or that month. And that's out of that came this song. And so I feel like our hard moments are actually opportunities if we just don't give up and don't give in to that. But yeah, it doesn't just happen. And even for us, we've gone down paths and it's just been a dead end. But again, that purpose drives you, that determination goes, okay, this is not the right one for us. Okay, let's find another one. And I think that freedom of just being open to whatever it is that is meant to be, something's going to come up. I guess that hope is in there as well, that it's might not be easy now. You've given and given and invested, and I haven't really reaped anything. But yeah, just hanging on there.
That's totally true. Speaking of stories that are painful and sometimes discouraging and where you can draw inspiration, your book is entitled The Silver Lining, the story of summer, snow, and sky. Okay. I've been wanting to ask this question. Can you please tell us what this book is all about? And what story of your life is featured here?
Can I show you the book? Is that all right?
Yeah, go for it.
I've just got a copy here. The reason I'm showing it is because on the front cover, there's actually a picture of summer, snow, and sky. So if you look a bit closer in the clouds, you can see that. So our journey began, my husband and I were dreaming of having a family. Amazingly, we had this opportunity and I was pregnant, and it was such an exciting time. We started our journey in a very rough way, as in it took us a little while to actually get to the place of having some children, having a pregnancy. And then our journey continued into 20 weeks. And so by about 18 weeks, I started to sense something was not the way it should be. And so by 20 weeks, I was in and out of hospital. But unfortunately, our 3 boys, Summer, Snow and Sky, they were born too early. So they weren't able to live at that early stage in life. And so unfortunately, they passed away. And you can imagine just that devastation of what just happened. My husband and I have a very strong faith. We pray, we believe in God, we serve God, and we're so confused. We'd had family and friends praying for us. We tried everything in those few days that we sort of had to kind of just between the time that we were told that this could be the end of your pregnancy to when it actually happened. We were just like, oh God, we just need you to come and help us. And no, it's not going to happen. They're not going to be born early. You know, we were adamant that's not going to happen. And unfortunately, they did pass away. So in all of it, it comes back to my relationship with God. And like I mentioned before, I would write out of a place of that deep emotion. So I'd write my songs out of that place. And so many times before this, I'd actually found that place through different hurts, through different disappointments. So for me, I settled back into that place. And the only safe place for me is with God. So I remember coming home from the hospital and still devastated. You've got all these dreams for these children. Everyone's really excited for you. It had been a long journey to try and get to be pregnant and then taken away. That feeling of something beautiful being snatched from you and that shock. It was just a very devastating time for us. But I remember coming home from the hospital and I remember sitting on my bed, and many times before when there'd been a disappointment or been a painful time, I'd go back to my bed. I'd sit on my bed. I'd take out my journal, take out my Bible, and I would write. And I would write the pain on the pages. And I would look in the Bible and the scriptures to see what is it that's going to help me now? What's going to heal me? What's going to bring hope back? And I remember that time I was sitting and I couldn't even write. I could not even write a word.
You couldn't express the pain.
That's right. I felt empty. I felt, not only had my children gone, but I felt inside there was just this hollow feeling and kind of numb as well. I sort of kept saying, no, you'll go back to sleep and you'll wake up and it'll be okay. And it didn't. I never woke up and it was never, I did wake up, but it was never okay when I woke up. So there I was sitting on the bed, and what I always do in those moments is that I turn to God. It takes me a while, but I turn back to God. So I was absolutely sobbing, and I said to God, I can't do this. You have to speak to me. I can't get through this without you. And so I got really angry and I started to scream and started to be really frustrated at the situation. How could this have happened? We tried everything. We did everything that we could to make this work. The doctors did everything they could to make this work, and yet it failed. And I said, God, where were you? And interestingly enough, in the labour ward, as my boys were being born, I remember having this sense that even though there was deep pain and confusion, I had this sense of peace. It was a strange sense, but I knew that God was in that room. He was with me. So there I was on my bed, sitting down and screaming at God and just being like upset. And then God said, "Do you love me?" And I said, "Of course I love you. I've loved you all of my life. God, look at my life. I've spent time with you. I've written songs about you. I've given my life in service to you. Of course I love you." And then God said, have a look at 1 Corinthians chapter 13. It talks about love. And it says, love always trusts. And so God said, if you trust me now, I will use your pain for good. And there's a verse in Romans that talks about that God works all things together for good for those who love him and have been called according to his purpose. So that hit me. God saying to me, if you love me, you'll trust me. So I said, God, I trust you. I don't understand. It still hurts. I don't understand, but I trust you. And as I released that, I felt like this heaviness lifted off me. I was still crying and I was still upset, but I felt like I was now free to heal. And so from that moment on, I started to see God just healing me. Within a couple of weeks, we were already overseas and trying to encourage other people who are going through difficulty. That doesn't happen normally. That's not a normal thing. Someone who's gone through such pain. So there we were. It was hard. Every day I had to wake up and make a decision. Today I'm going to trust God. I remember that first week when after we'd lost our boys, I would purposely write down what I was going to do that day, because I could have just going to lie in my bed and I'm just going to let the days go past. You know, it was really devastating. I was not working at that point because I actually couldn't work being pregnant with the triplets. So then I was just at home and I remember just going, okay, today I'm going to get up. I'm going to read my Bible. I'm going to have some breakfast. And I did that day in, day out, day in, day out. And then I felt like my routine started getting momentum. And I started to look outside myself a little bit. We started to serve again, and that really helped. We had a beautiful community who surrounded us, and they showered us with love. They prayed for us. Ash and I actually felt like we were covered in a bubble. And as we were able to heal, we were protected in that time. We're really grateful to God for our family and our friends. So what actually happened with this book is I actually started to write it before we had the next journey. So God said he wanted me to write these things down. And I thought, no, because we've just lost our children.
What made you decide to write it, and how long after you lost the boys?
Well, to be honest, it would have been from my journal. So it was straight away. So as in, I didn't start planning a book, but I was journaling all my feeling and the whole situation. That was in that year. And then I started to actually write chapters the following year. So it was only about maybe 6 months or so later that I started to write it.
So that was not the intention. Because I can imagine that you sort of like have to relive the pain again and go through a process. But how helpful was that process though?
Like I said before, it was like a healing process. This is how I naturally communicate my emotions. So I write and I sing, and I even wrote the boys a little song, which I'm not going to share with anyone. It's just between me and our boys, but I wrote them this song. And so during that period of grieving, I actually would sing it to encourage myself. And it was all about that they were in peace, that they were okay, that they were safe, and that I would see them again. So that brought real comfort to me. But yeah, it wasn't easy. And there were days that I just thought, nah, just going to, get rid of this. I don't want to even see those words on a piece of paper or in my computer, but I continued to do it. And Ash and I started to notice that as we shared, so this is all still very new healing, but as we shared our story and we saw other people, whether or not they were going through a similar journey or just a painful journey of some sort. For example, we were asked to share at our church. We had an evening service and they said, we would love for you to share your story and how God is healing you. And I didn't want to do it, but I knew that we needed. So we shared the story. I remember sitting up on stage with some other people who were sharing as well. And then they asked us to share. And as I shared, I felt like this release as well. It's like I'm sharing this pain, but I'm feeling lifted and hopeful. After we shared the story, there were family came up to us and they said that what we shared was really helpful for them because they had actually had 3 members of their family pass away within 3 weeks. Wow. And it was all shocked, like there was no warning of this. And so when they came to church that night, they were going to give up on God. They were going to say, God, where were you for our family members? And they heard our story. You know, significantly, it was 3 people. We lost 3 sons. And they said when they heard us speaking, they started to ask God to heal them again. And they've now reconnected with God. As a family, they were hugging and crying and just saying, God, you are real and you're going to heal us and you're going to move us. And so we're just like those stories, you know, amazing that even out of our pain, God could use that to heal someone else as well.
That is so powerful. And I think that's also something God can only do. You can't orchestrate anything like that. So what will we expect to read in this book? Of course, you've described the journey, and will you also going to be talking about how it's healing you? What is the overview of the chapters inside the book?
Yeah, sure. So I based the book on my journal entries. So a lot of it starts with a journal entry, and then I actually take the reader into the story of my life at that time. It starts off with a bit of a shock, and then you go back in through our story and you come back to it. It's like a circular story, okay. Just giving a hint. And then for us, it's all about the journey to parenthood, and then a loss, and then through loss and grief. But it's called Silver Lining.
Yes. I actually wanted to ask about that. Why is the title called Silver Lining? What is the silver lining in this story?
The silver lining. Well, if you've ever heard that phrase, silver lining, you know, often people say it's looking on the bright side of life. You know, that's my experience with that word. And for us, the bright side, even though we were healing and even though we had a lot of support and love, the bright side was a bit distant for us. Every now and then we had to really strain to see that bright side. I actually had pictures of what God was doing inside my heart. So the first picture was clouds. So I had lots of clouds, dark clouds that would cover an area, and there was no sunshine, and it was really dark and it was depressing. And then I'd see a bit of streaming coming through of light from the sun. I have all these sort of images, but there was always a silver lining around these clouds, you know, and so I'm like, well, there's got to be something in this, God. Are you trying to communicate to me? Even when I was driving in the car, I'd see these clouds and I'd see the light shining through it. I'd be like, okay, God, it doesn't feel good, but I know that you're there. I know that that light's streaming through for me. Yeah, there's a bit of hope. And I had another picture, which I just feel to share now, but it was a picture of when I was sitting on my bed. God had shown me a doorway, and I was on one side of the doorway, and through the doorway was this beautiful place. It was paradise. I'd never seen leaves and trees and flowers like it was. It was just this gorgeous garden. And so I was on one side. I looked down and there's this little boy, and he has curly hair, very similar to me. And I grabbed him and I started to hold on to this little boy, and I wouldn't let him go. He wanted to go through the doorway, but I wouldn't let him go. So I was holding him, and he was moving around, and it was really awkward for him. But as I look up through into the garden, through the doorway, I see up on a hill, I see a picture of what I believe Jesus looks like. And Jesus is with these 2 other boys. And so I kiss the boy on the head. I know that if they're with Jesus, they'll be safe. So I release this little boy. He goes through the doorway and the picture finishes. And I remember that picture. I wrote it down in my journal. I remember what coloured tops they were wearing. One was wearing blue, the other was wearing white, and the third one was wearing a yellow and blue striped top. And I thought there's nothing hugely significant, but as I told Ashley that vision, he said, you have to see the picture of our boys. What happened was after I gave birth to our triplets, the nurses actually gave them little hats. So our boys didn't live for very long, but they gave them these little beanies. And I didn't want to see them. They were wrapped in little beautiful blankets, but I felt like I was already in shock. I didn't know how I could do it. Whereas Ashley had an opportunity to hold our boys. And so he held them, he sang over them, he told them that Mummy and Daddy loved them, and then he kissed each one of them, and then we said goodbye to them. in the vision, the shirts, the tops that they were matching were actually matching the little beanies that they had. And I'd not seen the beanies until Ashley showed me that picture.
Wow. Wow. That is incredible. I think that's also a way of God, assuring you, giving you assurance.
Yes.
And wow. Wow. I'm actually out of words. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to say too that that's what the picture is on the front cover. So it's in the clouds, but it's Ashley's arm holding the three boys with the little beanies on their heads. Yeah.
Okay. And I just want to also just to sort of wrap this conversation up. This was a very powerful story, full of pain, full of healing, and also hope. We would like to thank you for sharing this story to everyone who's going through a similar situation, a loss you can't understand and seems unbearable. And obviously you've gone through the journey and you're still in the journey. But I just want to ask, what has God done after this? In your life, it's unimaginable to lose 3 children, but what did God do after that?
So, I was just going to say the silver lining continued. There are a few things that God did, and I'll just quickly touch on them. The first one was a lot of our family and friends wanted to send us flowers. So our triplets passed away. They wanted to send us flowers, but we said, that's fine if you want to. But if you want to, you can actually send it to a group in South Africa. This organisation called Orphan Care Foundation, they actually rescue babies, and they would buy supplies for these babies. They would lovingly nurture these children. A lot of them are abandoned and neglected. And so this group would come in and put their arms around these children and help them to grow and nourish. If $15,000 was raised, it wasn't even an actual fundraiser, but people heard our story. Even people we didn't know, they just started to give money to these people overseas and these children. And so they actually built preschool, like a kindergarten, in honour of us and our boys. And so this is a place where these children who go to these safe homes can actually learn about ABCs, and the education part really ties in. And so they have these beautiful people coming in and working with these children so that they can actually learn what they need to so they can go into mainstream schooling. And so this is a legacy that our triplet boys have forever. Their short lives left this lifelong legacy of hope for other children. The other thing that happened was we were actually able to have children again. So we went through another process of falling pregnant, and God blessed us with 2 beautiful boys. We have 2 twin boys, and they are just the delight.
They are absolute delight.
Yes, they take after their father. But yes, and so that whole thing, again, going through the pregnancy around the same time that I'd lost the triplets, I had a lot of anxiety around what's going to happen. But this time, in God's grace, we were able to have these beautiful boys, and we named them Z and J, and they are just amazing. They keep us busy. Our life is really busy. Forget about sleep when you're, But yeah, we love them, and yeah, we feel truly blessed to have them.
What a mighty God we serve, and how God just restores and heals and redeems. And I'm absolutely blown away by this conversation, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are also holding on to their seats. Thank you so much for sharing, Liesl. How can we get a copy of your book?
Yes, so you can visit Amazon, even any of those online bookstores, and you can just type in LA Field Silver Lining and it'll come up for you.
Okay, that's wherever books are sold online, and you type LA Field Silver Lining and you go get a copy of that book. That's amazing. Liesl, my last question would be this. Your story is incredible, and you said in the beginning that the reason why you're always on the go is that the purpose, and that your message is the purpose. What would you say to someone who's listening right now, who's probably in their room, in their bed, wanting to give up? Whether there's a failed business, it's a loss in the family, or whatever it is. If you can give one piece of advice, what would that be?
It's a good question. I would have to say that it's darkest before the dawn. So it's going to get really dark. And when it gets to the very darkest moment, that's when the dawn begins. And you may not sense it straight away, but that's when the dawn starts. So I would say definitely hold on. You've been created with a purpose. You've been created with something that you've been designed to do. No pain, no difficulty, no obstacle, no situation. If you just hang on, nothing can stop you from reaching that potential that you've been designed for. And I would just say that you're not alone. And I would encourage those who are feeling alone to really reach out to someone. And if you don't get help from the first person, ask another person. Share your dreams, share your hope. Another thing I would just say is that with us, we found our healing through connecting with people, but also giving to other people. And you feel like you've got nothing to give, especially when you're feeling empty and pained. You feel like there's nothing to give. But I would say just extend your hand to someone, even if it's a small little thing. It's amazing, but whatever you give, it's like it blasts back at you. You get so much more when we open up our hearts to give to others.
Amazing. Wow, it is a silver lining. Thank you so much for joining us today, Liesl, and we send blessings to you, and we cannot wait to get hold of this book and to hear more of your music. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been really fun.
Thank you for joining us. Today's podcast episode was brought to you by OhNothingNonprofit.org.